Standing up for families throughout Nevada, telling the stories of working women and men. This is our voice and our community. We are Nevada with your hosts, Leonard Cardinelli and Nick DiArcangelo.
Come on, rise up. Come on, rise up. Come on, rise up. Come on, rise up. Come on, rise up.
Good morning, listeners, and welcome to the We Are Nevada Talk Radio Show every Friday morning, 9 a.m., right here on KLAV 1230 a.m. with your hosts, Leonard Cardinelli and Nick DiArcangelo. That is your real last name.
Well, as far as you know.
I've had like 3 people ask me that.
Oh, yeah?
Is that his real last name? Yeah, that's not a nickname.
I always tell people, look, if I was going to make up a last name, I'd pick something a lot easier. I can't tell you how many times I sit at a restaurant or something and they look at it down there. I never, and they don't call. And I sit there for hours waiting because people are like, that's a gag name. That's not a real name. So yes, it's my real last. If I was going to make one up, it would be something much easier.
I've heard many pronunciations of my last name, and I don't really pay attention. My dad was very specific. He corrected people often.
Oh, my dad too. I'm glad you get my name right, though. That's all that really matters.
Yeehaw.
Hey, I want to invite people to call in because this is that kind of show. If you've got something you want to contribute or talk about, we're here ready to talk to you, and our number here is 702-731-1230. And again, that's 702-731-1230.
There's got to be someone out there who has an opinion about the retirement system here in Nevada, or collective bargaining, or any kind of labor laws, or has a question about the upcoming election, voter suppression, whatever subject you want to talk about, voter registration, whichever side you take. There's got to be someone out there who's curious, at least.
I agree with you, Leonard. There's got to be someone out there.
I think maybe they're just not used to us yet, and they're like, I don't know if I should call or not. Go ahead and call. We'll put you on with Nick. He's very friendly.
Oh, yeah, right. Well, I'm excited. I mean, first of all, I'm excited that it's Friday. I love being here every Friday morning, and it's just, this is our chance to get the voice of our members out there and the voice of the working families of Nevada out there and talk about the issues that are important to us. And and I'm also just so excited because we're so close to the to Election Day, And look, I voted early, first day. I couldn't wait to get out there. I practically was running out, So, but we're right around the corner for the big day.
Right, Obama visited for the third time in maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and he was over at the Cheyenne Sports Complex, the Cheyenne campus for CCSN, and I guess our good friend Al Martinez from SEIU, the president of SEIU, and Danny Thompson from AFL-CIO were over there to greet him, and they sent us some pictures. I guess it was a very good rally, and his message was our work's not done yet. We still got more work to do.
Oh yeah, and look, when you say greet them, they were like right there. I saw pictures, and it was like, that must have been a really special moment for them. But this is, and it's funny because it's so easy to get our minds focused on the national politics, right? But this election is so much more than just national politics. That, of course, is important, but the local politics are even more important, especially, on November 7th, everything's going to shift. Our entire focus is going to shift on the next legislative session. And, whatever happens nationally, of course, will have an impact on families and the economy and foreign policy and things like that. But boy, oh boy, there's nothing that's going to be have a greater impact on our daily lives than what happens in the next legislative session. And the next legislative session, whether it's good or bad towards working families, is going to depend on how we vote on the 6th. So yeah, of course, if you're getting out there because the national politics has you involved, that's great and everything. But don't forget that there's a whole other bunch of names underneath that ticket, and your decisions there are going to make such a huge difference in this legislature. And I could tell you, we could both tell you as two guys that were up there in the last legislative session, we need the hard work now to help us when we get up there into Carson City, right, Leonard?
They're going to double their efforts, and they already know what the key issues are. We know that prevailing wage, collective bargaining, the retirement system, misclassification. I mean, it's all the construction defect. Those are all the main issues, and they're going to come up again. However, I would say some of the differences this year will be that on the conservative side, they'll be a little more prepared for the fight and take it a little more seriously than they did last year. And I would say on the labor side, from what I understand, there'll be a lot more BDRs, bill draft requests submitted, and there'll be a lot more attempts at changing the law, modifying the law, and amending the law so that we can shore it up and make it a lot more, change the wording so that's not as ambiguous, I guess is a good word.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, we're going to see a lot of that. And look, if this election has proven anything to us, it's that things are going to get really intense, and the dirty tricks are just going to keep rolling on through. We've talked on the show about voter suppression and the efforts that have been made on that front across the country. And then I see in the New York Times on Thursday this report about the Congressional Research Service, which is a nonpartisan. This is like
nonpartisan.
It's totally nonpartisan function that comes out with this economic report. Right? And so the economic report said that there was no correlation between top tax rates and economic growth. Taxing the rich and the effects of taxing the rich, whether and how that works, does not equal economic growth or that type of thing. Which is it's a core tenet for conservative economic theory, right? So what ended up happening was that conservatives and Republicans said, "Hey, look, you know what? We don't really like the language in there." And, because it says taxing the rich, I mean, it was really kind of blunt in the way it said it. Taxing the rich does not equal economic growth. So it said, look, you got to pull that. It's not, the report isn't good. It was interesting. It's this looking at these details and saying, it's not the report that we're criticizing. It's the language that was used in the report. And so we need to suppress this. We need to pull it back out. So it was pulled out. They actually, pulled this report from being released.
Well, I'm no history expert, but I'm pretty sure that right after World War II, I believe the richest in the country were taxed at a very high rate. I want to say 80 to 90% for a while to stabilize the economy when we really were all in it together.
Right.
And now they want to say that taxing the very rich isn't going to stabilize the economy. But isn't that kind of like a card game where the goal of the game is to get rid of as many cards as you can? Well, if you start with 5 cards and I start with 10, I would say that you have an advantage. So we're not saying that we want to tax anyone any more than anyone else. We just want them to catch up. At least that's the way I look at it.
Well, and it's, so there's 2 different issues here, right? Because we're talking about, you're talking about exactly the how that works and policy and stuff like that. And, I'm kind of taking a step back and I'm looking at what the New York Senator Chuck Schumer said was like, look, this is a banana. It's like a banana republic, right? They don't like the report, but instead of rebutting it, they had them take it down. And whether you like the information or not, it's suppressing information. All these nasty, dirty tricks to win are not going to help us, right? Suppressing votes, suppressing information. And doing all this type of, this type of stuff is not going to help us move forward. It's not going to help us move ahead.
Is it desperation?
Yeah, it looks like desperation to me. I mean, So let's look. We have a great interview here today, and actually, this kind of goes into what we're talking about a little bit. And
right, John Sasser.
Yeah, John, welcome to the show. Are you? How you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. Thanks so much. We're Nevada is a radio show that is from. It's also our Public Employee Coalition, and it's made up of healthcare workers and public safety professionals, educators from all over the state, and really want to welcome you to the show here because we reach a group of people that are very concerned about our future as far as for working families and the working class. And take a minute. Why don't you tell us about yourself and the work you do and who it benefits?
Okay, well, I am the statewide advocacy coordinator for 6 different civil legal services programs in Nevada. Those are nonprofit corporations that provide free legal help to low-income Nevadans in civil law matters. For 2 of those 6 programs, I'm also their lobbyist in the legislature, get involved in all kinds of issues that impact low-income people, from consumer rights, landlord-tenant issues, and health care, all the budget issues for programs that our clients rely on. And I've been doing that since I came to Nevada since 1982.
Well, John, Medicaid can be a little complicated for people to understand. Can you give me like a broad overview of what Medicaid is and who it benefits exactly?
Sure. Medicaid is a joint state and federal program started in about 1974. And what it does is it gives free legal help to people below certain income levels. The primary populations are the aged, blind, and disabled who are low income and have not worked long enough to qualify for Medicare or Social Security disability. And then also low-income families with the primary beneficiaries being children. The way the program works is historically the state pays about half of the cost and the federal government pays about half of the cost of the program. Because Nevada's economy has been so bad, actually our share is going to change a little bit over the next few years. Instead of paying half the cost, we'll only have to pay about 40%. But it provides a full range of medical care to those people. One of the things that people may not realize is it also provides nursing home care and community-based services for people who would otherwise be in nursing homes. And so that can affect people's parents. Lots of folks end up in that situation and their life savings are wiped out very quickly, even though they worked all their lives and have saved a fair amount. It doesn't take long for a nursing home bill to suck up all of that.
Oh, yeah.
And then Medicaid is the sort of payer of last resort for those nursing home services.
So now there's been a lot of, the reason why you're on today is we're going to talk about this this idea of Medicaid expansion. And, and talk to me about that. What is Medicaid expansion? How does it fit in with this the broader concept of the Affordable Care Act of Obamacare?
Right. As you may recall, the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act was passed in spring of 2010. Mm-hmm. And one of the main goals of the act was that everybody in the United States should have health insurance, with a few minor exceptions. If you did not have sufficient resources to pay for health insurance on the private market, and your income is below 138% of the federal poverty level, and just to give you some idea of what numbers that would be, for a single individual that'd be about $15,000 a year, and for a family of four, about $31,000 a year. So if your family's income is below that, then you would be covered by an expansion of the Medicaid program, even though you're not age blind, disabled, or have a child in the family. And then those people whose incomes are above that would purchase their insurance on an insurance exchange. In Nevada, that's the Silver State Health Insurance Exchange. And if your income is below 400% of the poverty level, then you could qualify for subsidies from the federal government to help you with that insurance. And everybody is mandated to have that insurance. That's called the individual mandate that was contained in the Affordable Care Act. And so those over 400% of poverty would have to buy it all out of their own pocket. So what happened, as you know, is a number of states challenged the constitutionality of that legislation, and it went to the U.S. Supreme Court, and on June the 28th, the court found that the individual mandate requiring everybody to buy health insurance was constitutional, but the mandate to the states saying that the states had to expand Medicaid to everybody under 138% of poverty was not constitutional, and so the states have the option of expanding or not. So on a state-by-state basis, we're basically deciding whether to follow that part of the Affordable Care Act. And in Nevada, as you know, the governor has not made that decision yet and will not make it, obviously, between now and next Tuesday.
Well, yeah, all right.
John, we have a lot of single parent, single moms listening to the radio show, and one of the questions I hear is they want to know why Medicaid requires single mothers to collect child support if they're not applying for Medicaid for their children, and then they're only applying for themselves. Why do they make you apply for that?
Well, just to separate that out, that is not part of our discussion of Medicaid expansion.
Right.
One of the groups of people that get Medicaid today under the present law is recipients of temporary assistance to needy families, or TANF, or we used to call it welfare, or aid to dependent children. And in order to get that money from the state, you are required to pursue child support from the father of the children as a condition of doing that, on the theory that the state shouldn't pay for your support when the support of your children when the father who is responsible for that should be paying. So that, and if you don't cooperate with child support enforcement, that can disqualify you from TANF. If you are eligible for TANF, you are also eligible for Medicaid for yourself and your kids, and so they're intertwined in that way.
Okay, thank you for that answer.
So let me ask you a question, because we're talking about about the people that qualify for this, and we're talking about the poor that receive these benefits. Is this part of that 47% that we heard, that that famous video, the working poor, working families, that type of thing, that people that are working that are underemployed, I think they call it.
They have a sense of entitlement, those people.
Yeah, right.
Well, the 47% absolutely is the group that we're talking about, both for Medicaid expansion and for the folks that will be obtaining money on the exchange. The question is, in this country, is whether people should have health insurance or not. Right. It's better for all of us if everybody is insured, because if you're not insured, you end up at the hospital and you can't pay your bills, and the cost of that uncompensated care gets passed along to the rest of us in the form of higher insurance premiums. So the policy behind the Affordable Care Act is everybody should have insurance, and you should basically pay what you can afford to pay. If you can afford to pay nothing, because you're below 138% of the poverty level, then you would get it through Medicaid. Right. If you could afford to pay something, those below 400%, then it's kind of like a sliding scale in a way. It depends on your income. You pay part of it, and the federal government subsidizes it. And then if you're above 400% of poverty, which is well above the 47%, then you're expected to pay for 100% of it. So that's the philosophy behind the ACA.
Right. And look, we see that model really clearly here in Clark County with UMC, as far as the impact that uninsured have on on their budget and their ability to serve the community, them being the only nonprofit surrounded by for-profits, and having to serve the community, being the safety net for the community, and so we see that problem, and so the expansion, why is it good for Nevadans? Why should the governor do this?
Well, start by looking at where we are today. We have some 600,000 Nevadans out of our 2.7 million population who are uninsured. We have the highest uninsurance rate for children in the country at about 16%, and Texas is second at about 13%. So we're sort of at the bottom. We spend already, just today, less per capita Medicaid than any other state in the union, and that's been that way for 9 out of the last 10 years. So we're sort of starting at the bottom, if you will. And so it's a tremendous opportunity for us to make a big dent in a very, very serious problem with the federal government picking up the vast majority of the cost. What this boils down to, according to projections of the Department of Health and Human Services in Nevada, is about 70,000 lives will be affected by whether our choice to expand Medicaid or not. We'll already have about 70,000 new recipients come on as a result of the Affordable Care Act, even if we don't do the expansion. And that's because there are a lot of people today who are eligible for services that, for whatever reasons, haven't applied, and they're expected to, quote, come out of the woodwork and apply for the program. So on top of that, we could add another 70,000 in terms of making a major dent in our uninsured population. And for the first 3 years, the federal government would pick up 100% of the cost of the medical services for this group. And then between 2017 and 2020, our share would gradually go up from 2.5% up to 10%. And then after that, it would be a 90-10 split with the federal government picking up 90% of the cost. So for a very small investment in state money, we bring in a lot of federal money that will make a dent in our problem, which is the worst in the United States.
Wow, that's a good explanation. Thank you, John. John, you mentioned in an article that there is a tangible economic benefit to the expansion and that it will create jobs. Could you talk more about that?
Sure. One of the things the governor's office has not released at the moment is, we've had some figures in the paper about what is this going to cost Nevadans, but we've had no release of any information about what we get for the money, the little bit of money that we put up. My own rough analysis is that if we do Medicaid expansion, then over the 7-year period from 2014 to 2020, just that act alone will bring in $1.8 billion in federal funds to our state that would otherwise go to some other state.
Wow.
And you get that influx of federal money into your state, and it generates additional income and jobs because, if I can pay my doctor bill instead of not paying my doctor bill, then that creates jobs at the doctor's office. If I'm having coverage for my medical supplies, that generates profits for the supplier. The doctors and their nurses and everything then go out and spend that money at the local grocery store or at the local restaurants. And so there's kind of a multiplier effect, if you will, that rebounds throughout the economy. So the governor's office has all those figures. They have not released them yet. It's my understanding from the testimony of the Director of Health and Human Services that they have done an economic impact study that will be released whenever the governor makes his decision that will point out what the economic benefit to Nevada will be if we go there. But by analogy, Tennessee did such a study, and it looks to me like in the first biennium we would get between Medicaid expansion, if we adopt it, and the people coming out of the woodwork on Medicaid, about an extra $450 million in federal funds during that period. In Tennessee, about a $450 million increase in spending, in their estimation, would produce a little over about $1.1 billion in output. That's the value of goods and services produced as a result of that spending. About $371 million in additional earnings and about 7,500 additional jobs throughout the state. So if their analysis is accurate and we transposed it to Nevada, we would get about that same benefit in the first 2 years if we do Medicaid expansion.
Well, that sounds very tangible to me. Let me ask you this. What can Nevadans do to get involved, and is there a phone number or a website that you can recommend they go to get more information?
Well, the way our budget process works in the state is that the agencies first put in their request. That was done on October the 15th, and those are available online under the Department of Administration. So you can see what they've asked for and what's involved in the increased spending and money that comes in under the ACA without Medicaid expansion. They've done a separate budget for Medicaid expansion. It's not there. There was the next step in the budget process, as you know, is the governor formulates his budget that's released just before the legislature comes into session. So the ball's in the governor's court. And the person at the moment who has the power to make the decision to do this or not is the governor. So that's where advocacy efforts should be directed. People should be making a pitch to the governor through letters to him, sign-on letters, or other ways they communicate with the governor's office.
Great,
to
John.
ask the governor to adopt this expansion.
No, that's good. And that's the type of thing. I mean, that's what this show is for. Why we appreciate you coming on, because we need to get the basic information out there to educate people. Obviously, one of the things that we're going to be watching for is this. Is his decision, and then I can't wait to see this economic impact study.
Let's get an update before the session.
Yeah, John. Before we get into the session, we'd love to have you back on and talk more about this. And thanks for coming on this morning and letting us know about this really important issue and all the benefits that it has, and even indirect benefits that it'll have on the economy. I think this is the type of thing that, there's a lot of knee-jerk reaction to this stuff, but this is good information for everybody.
Thanks, John.
You're more than welcome. By the way, I didn't quite finish that last answer. There is some testimony from the Health Care Committee's August 29th hearing from the director, Mike Wilden, that outlines what analysis is public so far on Medicaid expansion. And there are a lot of wonderful national organizations that have information on their websites about the advantage of doing this, like the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, the Kaiser Foundation, Families USA, and so there's lots of information out there about why this is a good deal for our state.
Awesome.
Thanks, John, and thanks for coming on the show.
You are welcome.
At the Minnesota State AFL-CIO Convention, Hubert Humphrey, the 38th Vice President of the United States, said, "The story of the labor movement needs to be taught in every school in this land. America is a living testimonial to what free men and women, organized in free democratic trade unions, can do to make a better life. We ought to be proud of it." This week in labor history, November 1st, 1979, the UAW begins what was to become a successful 172-day strike against International Harvester. The union turned back company demands for weekend work rules and mandatory overtime. October 31st, 1931, Occupy Seattle was inaugurated. Led by unemployed lumberjack Jesse Jackson, the first Hooverville was built on vacant land owned by the Port of Seattle near Pioneer Square. A Hooverville was a popular name for shantytowns built by homeless people during the Great Depression. They were named after Herbert Hoover, who was the President of the United States during the onset of the Depression and widely blamed for it. The term was coined by Charles Michelson, publicity chief of the Democratic National Committee. Within 2 days, over 50 shacks were erected, and by 1934, 600 to 1,000 people were living in them. By 1941, Seattle's Hooverville covered 25 blocks. Hoovervilles eventually spread throughout the country. October 31st, 1829. George Henry Evans publishes the first issue of the Working Man's Advocate, edited by a mechanic for the useful and industrious classes in New York City. He focused on the inequities between the portion of society living in luxury and idleness, and amongst those groaning under the oppressions and miseries imposed upon them. Halloween 1891. Tennessee sends in leased convict laborers to break a coal miner strike in Anderson County. The miners revolted, burned the stockades, and sent the captured convicts by train back to Knoxville. October 30th, 1986. Ed Meese, Attorney General in the Ronald Reagan administration, urges employers to begin spying on workers in locker rooms, parking lots, shipping and mailroom areas, and even the nearby taverns to try catching them using drugs. October 29th, 1929. This day became known as Black Tuesday as the stock market took its biggest crash in history, marking the beginning of the Great Depression. October 30th, 1916. Industrial Workers of the World members were forced to run a brutal gauntlet by vigilantes in Everett, Washington. A few days later, between 5 and 12 Wobblies would be shot dead by vigilantes during the Everett Massacre. Tensions had been growing during a severe depression. The IWW had arrived to support a 5-month-long shingle worker strike. When a boat full of Wobblies arrived in Everett, the sheriff asked who their leader was. "We all are," they shouted back. The sheriff said they could not land, and the Wobblies said, "Like heck we can't." Someone fired a shot. No one knows who, but the majority of Wobblies were unarmed, and the majority of subsequent rounds came from the vigilantes on the shore. And this ends our week in labor history for Friday, November 2nd. Lynn Warney, the president of the Nevada State Education Association, joins We're in Nevada today to talk about the Education Initiative. The Education Initiative is a ballot initiative sponsored by NSEA and supported by all of the community partners in the Public Employee Coalition, We Are Nevada. Last week, there was a court ruling against the petition, but that has not prevented NSEA from collecting the signatures necessary to qualify the petition. Lynn, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Good morning, Lynn. Great to have you here.
Good morning.
So despite this court ruling, it sounds like there's good news to report about the signature gathering.
Indeed. We have moved forward full steam ahead with signature gathering around the state. We are confident that we have the qualifying signatures in hand, but we will continue to collect signatures so that when we go to Carson City in February of 2013, we will be able to bring an overwhelming mandate from the voters in the state to see education funded adequately.
Well, that's great. That is great news.
That's great news.
And so, look, there was a lot of focus in the newspapers, a lot of ink about what the summary said, this petition summary said, and how it says it. And but let's get down to what this really means. In your opinion, what does tens of thousands of signatures on these petitions say about Nevadans' commitment to education?
Well, I think it says clearly that, regardless of all the ups and downs that we've had economically, not only in the state of Nevada, but, around the country and actually globally, that to see Nevada get back on the road to prosperity, that we need to invest in public education in the state of Nevada. We've never made that commitment to our kids, and until we do, we're not going to be able to diversify the economy and bring the jobs back to Nevada.
I was going into DMV one day, and I was approached, and they gave a very good explanation of what the petition was about, and I signed it that day. But what do you have to say to someone out there listening? What should they know about what they've signed, and how will this petition help education?
Well, what the petition does is it sets up a dedicated funding source for K-12 education. It's something that we've never had in this state before. It institutes a broad-based business tax, also something that we've never had in this state before. Nevada is one of very few states in the country that doesn't have a broad-based business tax. So it would broaden our tax base, and the revenues from that tax would then be dedicated to K-12 education solely.
And, can you tell me more about how it works? So that's a question, I've been out on our speakers tours where we've spoken to different community groups, and, they say, well, they actually have really good questions. And I will say that's one thing that has really impressed me as we've gone out and talked to the public about this issue and about funding education. I haven't received, all the response that we get is really positive. People, I think, really understand that there is a problem out there, and they just want to know how this is going to work. So, as far as, businesses and those type of mechanics, how does that work?
It focuses just on the very largest corporations, those that bring in $1 million or more annually. It's then just a 2% margins tax. So based on then that total income, you calculate what that taxable margin is. It could either be 70% of that total revenue, or you can take that total revenue and deduct, cost of goods and compensation. And then it's just a 2% tax on that margin. Focus solely at the largest corporations operating in the state. Definitely not going after, the smaller, really job-generating businesses, but it's the largest corporations that will pay their fair share now for K-12 education in Nevada.
So is this just simply asking businesses to pay their fair share to participate in education? Is it something that you would say is fair across the board?
Absolutely. It's a very fair tax. It's small, relatively speaking, when you compare tax rates in other states and around the region, or even comparable, in size to Nevada. Again, focusing on just the very large corporations to pay this small tax we feel is reasonable and needed. A dedicated funding source for K-12 education is something we've needed for a long time, so that, we can be not just adequate, but we can really appropriately fund education in Nevada.
Well, Lynn, and so let's get down to that part of it. I mean, you're an educator. Talk to us about where is this money needed? Where's it going to go, and where is it needed in the system right now?
Well, I'm a fourth grade teacher, and I've been teaching in the state for over 25 years, and I've had class sizes over 30. And I can tell you can't provide individualized instruction to those youngsters so they can succeed in a class that large. So the money from this dedicated source would go to class size reduction. We'd also be able to give our educators the supplies that they need. I used to have to purchase many supplies myself, as educators do around the state, and that's just out of pocket, that they go out and buy books and other supplies that they need to get their job done so their kids can succeed. We need to be providing those tools to those educators, and so again, that's what the funding would be used for.
What about modern technology?
Absolutely. Our schools, we've got old schools that need, definitely some retrofitting to keep them up to speed in this technological age in which kids are going to need to compete globally. We just don't have the wiring infrastructure and such. So absolutely, to give, the kids and the teachers the tools they need, we've got to fund those things.
Leonard, it's funny that you say modern technology, but, in my conversations with educators, there's one story that sticks out where the kids just didn't have pencils, right? They didn't have pencils. Right. And the teacher was going to buy the pencil, and but the administrator said, look, no, don't buy the pencils, and don't ask the parents, because it was a school in a really impoverished neighborhood. And it said the parents are not going to have the money for pencils. We will find the money, right? And that's, when I think about it's not just about the latest gizmos or and that type of technology, which we would love and people would, obviously would strive for. But I think it's across the board. Lynn, am I correct? It's something as simple as pencils.
Oh, absolutely. Or just even paper. It's tough, and particularly in an impoverished neighborhood where, there's some challenges. You can't turn to the parents to help, and the teachers, know that that's what they've got to have, so they'll take it out of their own pockets.
So now let's take a look at this court ruling, right? And there seems to be a contradiction in the most recent ruling, and when you compare it up against previous rulings, not just with this effort, but even in previous efforts, can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, it was an interesting ruling that we did get from the judge. It was inconsistent with his previous ruling, and it focuses just on the description of effect, which is just this 200-word, and we're limited to just 200 words describing what is in this initiative. The initiative is over 30 pages long. It is complex. It's tax policy, but you want to be careful about what you put into statute. So you're provided then a 200-word description of effect. The judge felt the description of effect had some flaws, and so we're going to appeal that to the Supreme Court. Legal challenges are expected and they're planned for. But I think what's most important is the initiative language itself. That 30-page document is sound. It doesn't, violate single subject or any of the other legal technicalities, that it is a sound, piece of legislation.
And look, this is the thing. When these petition gatherers are out there, and you'll see them out there, they're wearing these green shirts that say TEI, the Education Initiative, on them. When they're handing you this document to sign, they're not holding one piece of paper in one hand and another piece of paper in the other hand. This is all one document. All the language is in the same document. The description of effect, I call it the Twitter-like description. Twitter
it is.
Keeps you to 140 characters. Well, the law says you can only have 200 words. This isn't a parameter or something that we came up with. This is the law that says this description has to be 200 words, and you have to kind of squirrel down all this information into those 200 words. So, and like I had mentioned, as I mentioned, it's all in the same document. There isn't something being hidden from the signer when they get this petition. You could sit there and read through all 30 pages. It's right there for you.
Well, let me ask you, Lynn, in the news article that I read, they had mentioned that there was a possibility the money could get red tagged in the general fund, and it could get distributed from there in different ways. Is that a possibility, or was that just...
It's a possibility. There's nothing in the petition that would prevent that. But the real issue here is that this actually, sets up a stable and dedicated funding source for K-12 education. And that's something that we've never had before in this state. And our schools and kids need to see the resources, that they have to succeed. So, what the legislature does or doesn't do when we get to Carson City, that's going to be up to them. We felt that if we included something such as that, we would be in violation of the single subject law and other provisions.
And that would have been challenged.
Absolutely, it would. In fact, we know that very well because we've had initiatives challenged on those grounds. So, it's not sound petition language, but that wasn't the point of this. What we wanted to do is set up a dedicated funding source for K-12 education, and that's exactly what this petition does.
Well, because we've seen cuts, right? It's been $600 million over how many years? 5 years or something like that? It hasn't just been cut after cut after cut?
It has. We have rolled funding back in this state for K-12 education. We've rolled it back over a decade. We're funding our schools at below levels that we funded them in 2003.
When population levels and everything else was much, much different.
It was.
Than it is today.
Are we still the lowest in the nation per student, or is that an exaggeration, do you think?
No, we're one of the lowest. Some say 50, some say 49, some say 48. Regardless of it, all those numbers should be, shameful.
lowest.
That's right.
Yeah.
They're shameful.
I'll tell you what, for me, what's shameful, I look at this and I see these legal stalling tactics, and it seems like there's echoes of voter suppression where, these petitions represent the voice of the people. I mean, should Nevadans be concerned about these tactics and what's happening with this?
Absolutely, they should. The people have the right to petition their government and to bring forward, this sort of measure. And, to see a small group of, self-interested folks try and throw up legal hurdles to prevent their voices from being heard in Carson City through a very, set process in the Constitution, a constitutional right, is discouraging. If these folks put in half as much effort as they are, putting into throwing up these legal hurdles, into really finding some solutions as to how we can help our kids in schools in the state, we'd be in a much different place.
But the good news is, as we have been talking about, you think it's going to move ahead? You think it's going to make it to the legislature?
I have all the confidence that it will. We've got the qualifying signatures. We will be submitting those to the Secretary of State in the middle of November, and we're confident that the legislators will take this up for consideration within the first 40 days of the 2013 legislative session.
Can you, thank you for that explanation, Lynn, but can you talk to us for a moment about NSEA's commitment as an organization to saying that education is adequately funded here in Nevada?
We've been committed to that for a very long time because we don't adequately fund. And I have to kind of push back on the term adequate, because adequate is just that. It's just adequate. We really need to appropriately fund our schools here in Nevada. When you look at, the nation, just forget the global comparisons. Just look within our nation, the states that have the highest graduation rates, the states that, score highest on SATs and such. Those guys, they invest over 3 times what Nevada invests in its kids. If we're going to have the kids from Nevada compete just on a national scale, maybe even global scale, we need to provide for them all that we can. And we're selling our kids short. I think we can do better. We should do better.
Last week, Nick and I spoke a little bit about education on the show, and one of the things we pointed out is that there are some people who are really against social programs. But statistically, it shows that the more well-educated that your state is, or the group of people you're speaking about, the less they are inclined to use social programs. So they're it kind of helps in ways that maybe aren't as apparent to everyone unless we point it out.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. You can distill it down into, an investment in education means that, so many more youngsters will graduate high school, and what that high school diploma means to the vitality of the economy. If they go on to then achieve, like, let's say, a bachelor's degree at a higher, institution of higher education, how much more that means to, an investment into the economy. It's critical that we invest in our schools in this state. It's our road to prosperity, back to prosperity in the state of Nevada, to bring these jobs back. If you look at the states that have now, started to pull out of the
economic malaise.
Exactly. They're the states that have invested in their schools. And Nevada's going to be one of the last to recover, and we're one of the lowest in what we invest in education. I think those two numbers, that's not just a coincidence, I guess.
So now we are headed to, there'll be the appeal, right? And we have the signatures. But I know we're still collecting signatures, right? So people should still look for these green shirts?
Absolutely. They're out there.
Good. And I know as we get closer to Election Day, they'll be out there and working really hard to collect these signatures to make sure that they're, to make sure that all of the Nevadans' voices are heard on this topic of properly funding education, not just adequately, properly, so we can bring it to the level it needs to be at. And that's the thing. I think that people shouldn't lose sight of the fact that this petition represents your voice and your chance to tell legislators how important education is in this state. So I can't wait to see more updates on this, and I can't wait to see this in the next legislative session.
Great, very informative, Lynn. Thank you. Thanks
Absolutely.
For
Thanks for having me. Thanks so much.
Oh, do I have a special surprise for you, Leonard? I really do. It's kind of funny because this is basically your idea. But yesterday, John, the extremely talented, one of the many talented people here at KLAV, by the way, we were working late into the night on something that we call the collective bargaining intro, and I wanted to give it its due praise and introduce it here for you. So here it is, our new introduction to a new segment that we have.
I am
called,
ready.
Collective bargaining. I hope you're ready.
I'm ready.
And I hope our audience is ready.
No preamble. I'm ready.
Here it goes.
Run for your lives! Collective bargaining is under attack!
Don't they know we're just families trying to get by? Why are they attacking collective bargaining? We've never hurt anyone.
Okay, that may top the PERS intro. That definitely was as an attention getter, and hopefully it gets people thinking about collective bargaining and what it really means.
I do have to put out the disclaimer that no toddlers, infants, or newborns were harmed in the taping of this
Or
segment.
animals.
Oh, yes, collective bargaining. It is under attack. We know that. We see that. It's coming down the pike for this next legislative session. It's going to be definitely one of those things, long laundry list of things. It was on the menu last time around during the last legislative session. And we already see that our opponents out there are doing everything they can with their messaging to show this notion of collective bargaining, this people having a voice in the workplace, as demonstrating it, saying it's a bad thing.
You're not talking about that NPRI study, are you?
Well, it's their report, it's their hack report that they put out, and of course it seems really bipolar. This report, it goes after a lot of strange things in different ways, and takes numbers and juggles them up and throws it out there for people to digest.
Well, Martin Dean DiPaolo, who's the director of the Nevada Center for Public Ethics, said the Piglet book provides a valuable service for citizens, although one must look closely for its political slant. I don't think
How
there's...
about political landslide?
Well, he continues by saying, I don't think there's another organization that comes out with anything like this. Some of the examples are valid, others questionable.
Yeah. Well, that's why NPRI stands for the Non-Progressive Regressive Idealists. I don't think a lot of people know that, but that's really what it stands for. So, it's just one of these things where we're constantly going to have to be making, getting the messaging out, the voice of our members of working families out there to people. So.
Collective bargaining, one of our focuses here on the show, educating the members, educating the public, educating the legislators, and letting them know what it's really about and what's important and why it's been working for such a long time.
That's right. Join us every Friday morning at 9 a.m. with co-hosts Leonard Cardinale and Nick DiArcangelo right here on KLAV 1230 AM Talk Radio, the new We Are Nevada talk radio show. Or you can listen to us live streaming on the internet at KLAV1230am.com.
Nick and I will be talking about the issues that are important to you, Nevada, updates on collective bargaining, and the Nevada Public Employee Retirement System. We'll be talking with teachers, nurses, and public professionals that will give you a look into exactly what it is they do for you each and every day, Nevada.
Don't miss our This Week in Labor History to experience the historical path that led us to the present and into the future. Leonard and I cover recent events, and we'll be talking about the presidential election, as well as our state and local elections right here in Nevada.
The new We Are Nevada talk radio show live every Friday morning right here on KLAV 1230 AM or streaming live on www.klav1230am.com. Join us every Friday morning at 9 a.m. And be informed, Nevada. Get the information right from the source so you can be confident as we move forward toward a better Nevada for all.
Let's talk about PERS, man!
Pension talk.
Yeah, that intro's still...
Seriously, why am I the guy that has to scream in all these promos, all these intros?
Yeah, we're trying to make retirement talk interesting for even the people who are unfamiliar with it. And as we get closer to the legislative session, if you go to the legislative website, you'll see that there are several bills that have already been submitted, bill drafts, to talk about the retirement system. From what I understand, one of the proposed bills is going to have something to do with, let's say you're in the system and you get to the age or the point where you're now eligible for retirement, but you want to continue to work. There's some kind of $2,000 bonus that they give you if you put the additional money into, guess what, a private retirement system. And then they're going to pitch it and say, now you get to make, and we're going to keep paying you returns. You get to make lots of money on your money. Well, what that does is it keeps the money from going into the PERS system, which, as you know, is intact and self-reliant.
Yeah, well, look, and this is one of those things where, as a person who used to who used to be a journalist and used to produce a segment called "Saving You Money," and as an investigative journalist, if it sounds too good to be true, it is. If someone is offering you, this is how badly they want to take control of this money, is that they're willing to offer people cash rewards if they'll give up their rights, and we've seen this before in many other forms when the other side is the regressives are trying to take away your rights, take away your voice or anything. They're going to make it look as sweet as possible and do a little bit of a shell game there and say, and we call it a shell game, we call it a money grab, and this is what it is. So if someone's sitting there telling you, hey, look, we're going to put $2,000 in your pocket, you know that the end result
free money
has got to be bad.
Right. Well, and the economy is sluggish still, and it's coming back. But I don't think there's ever a point where any person is going to look at $2,000 and say, you know what, I can't really use that $2,000 right now. I'd rather just leave it there. So when you start offering that, there's a good possibility that some people may jump on it.
Yeah, well, right. And then so what ends up happening is, as we've said over and over and over, you disrupt the funding and the funding flow into PERS, it collapses the system. And so people aren't going to think about that because, like you said, if there's a chance to put $2,000 in your pocket, you may not think about later on down the road what the long-term effect is going to be. But that's why we're here for, is to let people know, hey, this is going to be a situation where it might put money in your pocket now, but it's going to end up affecting everybody all the way down the line: retirees, the new employees and people who are already paying into the system.
Well, as you know, as we move closer to the next legislative session, which starts in February 2013, we will be focusing on collective bargaining, the retirement system, but we also have some non-union members. We have Plan and Progress Now, Si Puede, and they have some issues that are very important to them as well. That we will be supporting them on and bringing them to the audience and kind of educating everyone on what direction Nevada is going.
Well, we're all in this together. I mean, that's the thing. That's one of the reasons that this coalition is called We Are Nevada, right? Is because we all recognize that the fights that we have affect everybody, affect the state, and we need to stand together with one voice and make sure that these attacks don't continue. And that we strengthen what we have, all right? And if we're going to jump on this language of reform, well, okay, well, our reform is that we're going to strengthen the things that are good, and the public employee retirement system is one of those things. We're not going to let people take it away and turn it into something that is in the interest of Wall Street and big banks, when it's something that's working really well right now for our state and for our retirees. And there's lots of other things like that we're going to be talking about. And that's what the show again is about over and over, is that we're not just going to focus on this stuff that's coming up in the legislature. We're going to have like a laser on it, right? A giant spotlight, and say, this is what's going on, and this is how you can get involved, and this is who you should call. And if you're not going to call them, we're going to call them.
And I don't think that a retirement after 20, 25, 30 years of service is too much to ask, although some people would say that there is some I guess not greed, but that we need to relax on that. But what's really happening is when you sign on for your job, when you sign on as a medical professional, you'll be exposed to dangerous bodily fluids, things like that. And whether you're a fireman, a policeman, or a teacher, it's a life of service.
Yep.
So is it too much to ask that at the end of that 20 or 30 years that you get a decent retirement to live on?
It is not. Just remember, we're coming up on Election Day. The national vote is, of course, crucial, but don't forget about the local politics. It's what happens. Your vote is going to make a big, big difference what happens in this next legislative session. This participation in the voting process couldn't be any more crucial. It's so important that everyone votes.
Right, and don't forget to go down the list. We have Shelley Berkeley for Senate.
Oh, yeah.
We have Stephen Horsford for Congress, John O'Scara for Congress, Dina Titus for Congress. Those are important races. So go down the ticket and vote for the people who are going to back the middle class.
The nature of what we say on this show, starting November 7th, is going to be it's going to be one way or the other, depending on how people vote. And so make sure you vote.
Join us next week, Friday, 9 a.m., right here on KLAV 1230 AM.